Today we're going one-on-one with Kendall Brown. Went up to Mad Ants Media Day on Tuesday. Got to chat with the Pacers two-way player for about 5 minutes, plus some takeaways from Mad Ants Media Day. And 2 weeks into the season, I want to talk about the Pacers and their four-factor stats, what it means they need to grow on, and what it means they're doing well, all coming on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
Our Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, fun day, little break in the week, and I went up to Mad Ants Media Day on Tuesday, and I got to talk with Pacers two-way wing Kendall Brown for a little over 5 minutes. I'm going to air the whole interview on the episode today. Can learn a little bit more about Kendall Brown, his early season development. Then we'll talk Mad Ants Media Day, what was kind of learned. Justin Anderson, ex-Pacer there. The two-way guys were there. We heard from Tom Hankins, a Pacers assistant coach, who's the Mad Ants head coach, about that team's expectation. Then we're 2 weeks into the Pacers season. What are their four factors, stats? Say they're doing well and not so well. We'll get to all of that today. For all of you watching on YouTube, you can see got my Phillies jersey on. 7-0 win today for my Phils. And I'm in a great mood as a result of baseball. But let's start with talking with Kendall Brown. It was fun to chat with him for about a little over 5 minutes. Was hoping to go a little longer, but it was the media day setting did not dictate it for much longer. You can actually hear I cut out the last about 20 seconds because you can hear a door open. And in the middle of Kendall Brown's last answer, as a bunch of people are about to flood out into the hallway right by where we were doing this one-on-one. But Kendall Brown, very gracious with his time. We talked a lot about the Pacers and his Mad Ants setting, right? He just spent a road trip, or part of a road trip with the Pacers, got to see how these guys who are in the NBA grow and develop. Well, he himself also got to, play in preseason, be with this team for training camp, and then go straight to Fort Wayne, to the Fort Wayne team in Indianapolis to get training camp working himself. We talk about Rick Carlisle, his coaching, and how it helps both the Pacers and young players like Kendall Brown. We talk about Tyrese Halliburton, his leadership as a young player, and of course, fellow rookie Benedict Mathurin, how impressed he has been with a guy drafted in the same class as him, right? Around the same age, Kendall Brown, 19, Benedict Mathurin, just 20. Those, he talked highly of the other rookies. So lots of fun stuff to get to. Let's just bring him right in, if you can hear, from Pacers rookie Kendall Brown.
Take me through the last week for you. I see you in Chicago, and then you're at Fort Wayne and Indy the next day. How has that been good for you? And do you feel like having training camp with this team was helpful for your development?
Yeah, I feel like it's been really good for me, just to get accustomed to going back and forth with the two-way contract. So being able to, go back and forth between each team and get accustomed to everything and everybody on it has really helped me.
You get to work with Tom in training camp for the Pacers. Now he's your head coach here. What do you like about his coaching style? How has he sort of helped you develop so far?
Yeah, he's a great coach. I've worked with him a lot, even out of practice, just working on finishing and a bunch of other stuff that would help me develop my game even further. He's a good coach. He's really patient and really knows what he's talking about, so I appreciate him.
What did you learn on the road with the Pacers to open this season?
Really just, the way we started, it was like 0-3, so it just, I learned that, there's a lot of games in the season, so, you can't just get down on one game. You got to be ready to bounce back, and each guy on that team has a great attitude, and the vets on there really keep the team where it is.
There's this perception of Rick as a coach that, he didn't join the Pacers to join a rebuilding team, but he always talks about how he loves teaching, he loves those individual moments. How have you viewed him as a coach so far, and how helpful has he been for you at that pro level?
Yeah, as a former champion, he wants to get right back to there. He's a great teacher. He really knows what he's talking about. He just helped me with a lot of stuff, whether it's shooting or seeing the game in a different way. It's just great to learn from him, and everyone else on the team can agree with me.
Him being a former player, is that also kind of helpful in his teaching moments?
Yeah, just being a former player, he knows the game, and he can like connect more with other players, as being a player.
When you have a bigger role with this Mad Ants team, how do you assert yourself? How does that help you as you kind of develop on the NBA level?
Yeah, I just feel like, just, help me, just work on stuff and kind of hone my skills more to get ready for when I get called back up there, and just build a confidence in me that is really going to help.
Is there anything they're trying to get you to work on down at this level, or do you feel like for you it's more about getting more well-rounded, getting those on-ball reps, things like that?
I would say, there's a lot of stuff I can work on, but really just getting on-ball reps and really just, getting more reps, I would say.
Tyrese Halliburton's pretty new to the Pacers organization, but what stood out to you about him and having such a young leader for an NBA team? That's pretty unusual.
Yeah, he's a real good leader already. Everyone respects him. And just when he comes on the court, he's ready to play, and that's what you want in your leader. He works hard, holds people accountable, and he holds himself accountable. So.
You're a rookie, and Benedict Matherin's a rookie. You've been with him since the draft. Is it almost unbelievable from your seat to see how good he's been and what he's doing to start his NBA career?
Yeah, I mean, he's Rookie of the Year. But, man, he's doing really good. Talked to him a lot, and he's just killing it. I'm proud of him.
How have you seen him evolve? Because at Arizona, he wasn't really known as, this fierce of a rim attacker necessarily. He was more known for his off-ball movement and ways to get free. But it seems like he's got kind of the whole package of scoring right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's really getting to the basket and drawing fouls. So I just feel like he uses that a lot, and it's really helped him to start the season.
What are your personal goals for this year, both at the NBA level and at the G League level?
Just become a knockdown shooter. I feel like once I get that, I'll be pretty set. So just being able to be a knockdown shooter and just win. So everyone wants to win, but to do that you got to play as a team and work hard.
Anyone specific you've grown close with, either with the Pacers or with the Mad Ants so far?
Pretty much everyone really, both with the Pacers and the Mad Ants, everyone's, connected. So and even more like since I've been here with the Mad Ants, we've just been growing more and feeling more accustomed to each other.
Always good to hear from players and love getting Kendall's perspective. I've chatted with him a few times throughout this season. At the end, you missed me jokingly asking him about driving up I-69. Indiana residents will know all about that, but of course I cut it out because there's a lot of audio in the background when people came in, but really enjoyed the unique perspective Kendall Brown provides, and I think he's in a really good situation for his growth, right? As a young guy like that, who's really raw and looking to develop skills, like he said, becoming a knockdown shooter is a big part of his game, right? He's got all the athletic traits that's been talked about at the pro level and the G League level, but how can he convert that into ball skills, into leadership skills on the court, and shooting, a valuable skill? The Pacers situation that he's in is really good, both in that it's a teaching, developing situation when he is with the Pacers and when he's with the Mad Ants. It's not like he's with a team trying to win. So if you're a player like him, he could not have been asked to be drafted to a situation that is more favorable to him, considering that he fell. This worked out, I think, pretty well for him. He did show those flashes in the preseason, right? Hit half his shots, 3.5 points per game in his 4 appearances for the team, 1 assist per game, nearly a rebound per game, right? He did really well in his limited second half minutes and showed what kind of guy he can be. I think that they really wanted to get him in that draft. They were really happy they were able to get that pick from Minnesota to get him. So seeing what he can do for this team, I think, will be fascinating, both at the G League level and the Pacers level, if he is able to get time with the pro team at some point this season. Because if he does add a shot, or with the G League team shows that he can be a really good play finisher or play setup man or defender, like I always say with wings, if you can either shoot or defend, you just have to be able to do one. You can get on an NBA court. If Kendall Brown shows that at the G League level, that would be huge for his growth, right? Edmund Sumner's shot developed over several years with Fort Wayne that helped him become a better NBA player. I think the same can be said about Kendall Brown. And to close on his situation, I think Carlisle being in more of a teaching mode with the younger team is also very helpful for Kendall Brown, who said he's learned a lot from a coach like that, who of course has the championship pedigree, but as a former player is good at teaching this stuff. So I hope you liked what Kendall Brown had to say. Wish I could have gone longer with him. I did go longer with another player, which you'll hear about in the next segment, although I'm not going to post the full interview on this one because he's not with the Pacers this season. But let's talk about Mad Ants Media Day in general. Heard from Justin Anderson, David Stockton, the two-way guys, the coach, the GM, and how it relates to the Pacers this season. Hey guys, one short little break here so I can talk to you about BetOnline.net, your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game all over at BetOnline. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information, live betting, and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. They've got Thursday night football lines up for this weekend. Houston Texans gross versus the undefeated Eagles. Eagles favored by 13.5 in that game. Patriots favored by 5.5 over the Colts. All those lines and more over at BetOnline.net, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf, plus way more. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more because BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, go over to the guys at Locked On Nets. If you know why I'm suggesting Locked On Nets, of course, go listen to Locked On Nets. And if you don't, well, let's just say you are in for a ton of stunning surprises about Brooklyn and what happened in the last 24 hours there, especially now that their game just ended. They lost to the Bulls, and now their rookie from last season is posting cryptic messages about his playing time. The Nets just keep becoming more and more of a storm of problems. Locked On Nets is the second listen for you today. Let's talk about Mad Ants Media Day and why it matters for the Pacers and all that sorts of stuff. Lots of Mad Ants coverage this week because I've been at a lot of Mad Ants events. I promise I will cover them as needed and as they relate to the Pacers this season because I know people are interested in them to the extent that they are an arm of the pro team. It was really fun to see this team today because this is probably the best Mad Ants team that has been constructed since I have closely followed them. They have one more cut to make before their season starts, TBD on who that's going to be, but it's not going to be a wing most likely, and that team, this Mad Ants team this year, is loaded on the wing. They're like the anti-Pacers from a construction perspective, which can be good for promotions later in the season. One of those players we'll talk about in a second did get promoted last year in Justin Anderson, but a loaded team on the wing at the G League level, right? Justin Anderson, who was all G League first team last year, made the Pacers in the NBA. Trevelin Queen, the MVP of the G League last year, was on the Rockets at the pro level last year, will likely at least play a couple games for the Pacers this season. And Trevelin Queen said this team's kind of been clicking already. And for a guy that has been in the NBA and has played on very successful G League teams, that is, of course, encouraging to hear if you would like to see success of the Mad Ants. And by the way, as an aside and as a Pacers-specific aside, I've talked to a lot of people about Trevelin Queen, players on the Pacers roster, Trevelin himself, people who work for the Pacers and Mad Ants, and everybody has very positive things to say about his skill set. I think there's a chance he ends up being a pretty lucky find for the Pacers that he got hurt for the Sixers, and the Pacers were able to get him and scoop him up. He seems like he'll be quite a good player. But also Tevin Brown, Justin Anderson singled him out as a player that's played well for this team. He's another wing. They have David Servidis, who's with the Pacers for training camp, has a couple years of NBA experience. Jermaine Samuels, who played for the Pacers in Summer League. Kendall Brown, of course, who we just heard from, who's on a two-way deal. And Abu Kijab, their first-round pick in the G League draft. I mean, they have wings on wings on wings, which is so interesting because the Mad Ants roster is very different to the Pacers in terms of build, right? Norvell Pell is going to be the center for that team. They've got David Stockton and Gabe York at the point guard spots, but in general, the Pacers are a ton of bigs and a ton of guards and not a lot of wings. The Mad Ants are a ton of wings and not a lot of bigs and guards. So it's very interesting how different they are because in the past, and I think this is a smart strategy, the Mad Ants have tried to play as similar to the Pacers as they can given the roster construction that they have. And I talked to Tom Hankins, the head coach of the Mad Ants, about that at Media Day, and he's an assistant coach for the Pacers as well, right? He coached under Bjorker and now under Carlisle, right? He survived the coaching change, so he's done it for different eras. He knows what it takes and to run that system. And so he said that, yeah, they'll play like the Pacers again, probably, but he has the ability to change. Rick Carlisle has given him the autonomy to change stuff if he wants or sees needed for the Mad Ants roster to do as well as they can, which I think is going to be interesting for a Mad Ants team that has a ton of wings and is a little different than the Pacers roster build. I think the key part of that, though, and Hankins detailed this at Media Day, is if players do get called up, if Justin Anderson gets 13 games at the pro level last year like he did, or Servidis gets a call up, or the two-way guys who are splitting time, get play at the pro level, or anybody who has the ability to, which there are quite a few, gets called up to the Pacers this season. The big thing that the Mad Ants can help the Pacers with is terminology, right? So that all the defensive terms and all the play calls and stuff like that are the same have the same terminology, so guys don't go to the Pacers and are just totally overwhelmed by what's going on and what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to fit in. They know what they're going to do, and they know how to do it. I think that is the key synergy between the two teams. Despite their rosters being very different, it can still be a great development and advancement resource for all these players, in that it can be a situation that allows them to succeed if they do get that call up and if they do play well at the G League level and do it themselves. Now, like I said at the top, this is one of the better Mad Ants teams in recent memory, for sure, of this, kind of era. I don't know if you can call it an era, but, where Hankins is the head coach and Chris Taylor's the GM building the team. I think this is probably the best team of that era. Hankins talked about this today, but in the bubble year of the G League, when only about half of the G League teams actually played, though, there were half as many teams picking from the whole G League pool. So, of course, the rosters were deeper, but comparatively, they weren't actually better. Whereas this year, it looks like on paper they should be one of the better teams in the league. They were 500 last year, and last year was crazy because they had so many call-ups, which is good. If you're the G League team, you're happy about that. But it's also hard to win when all these guys are, and this is because of, COVID 10 days primarily, but for a ton of reasons. Guys get called up left and right. Nate Hinton, Gabe York, Justin Anderson, among several others. Terry Taylor and Dwayne Washington play a ton for the actual Pacers. Kiefer Sykes, another call-up. It was so hard for them to field the same team every game, but they are a much more talented team than that 500 team last year, even beyond that sort of stuff. So they should be pretty good, and adding the G League MVP, who will be with that team for at least some level of time this year, will of course also be helpful. They have two of the best 5 G Leaguers from last year in Anderson and Queen, plus also Kendall Brown and a lot of guys with NBA experience. So I think it's very funny that I didn't even think about until this was said at Media Day. And this was sort of said jokingly, but someone jokingly was like, we're kind of older than the Pacers, talking about the Mad Ants, and that kind of made me laugh. But it's kind of true, right? Looking at this Mad Ants team, and first of all, a lot of people say that the Mad Ants should just be a development factory for the Pacers full of young players, and sort of, but also these guys have aspirations of their own that aren't just getting to one team. They would like to be in the league and be the best players possible at whatever age they are and whatever walk of life. That's not how it works. You can only sign players who want to play for your team. That's not how the G League truly works, even though there is an element of it being an arm of the pro squad. Either way, between David Stockton, who's in his 30s, Benny Boatwright's a little older, Justin Anderson's nearing 30, Norvell Pell's a little older, not that much. Gabe York's almost 30. They have an older team of some guys who have been in the NBA and are quality players. That made me laugh to think about the Mad Ants being kind of as old as or older than the Pacers. But they tip off their season this weekend. Should be an absolute blast to see what they can do, what the two-way guys can do. Not really clear where they're going to be. They've been with the Mad Ants since last week. I think, I was in Chicago and I saw Trevelyan Queen and Kendall Brown both were with the Pacers when they played the Bulls last Wednesday. So about exactly a week ago today, if you're listening. And then they went to Fort Wayne, I believe, the very next day. Went and joined Fort Wayne. They were in Indianapolis in the Pacers facilities the very next day. So I know that they've been with that team in camp for a while. The Pacers still mostly healthy, although they did get a little beat up in Brooklyn. So it seems like they have enough depth to not need them, and the Mad Ants season will start with those two guys playing for Fort Wayne, which will be really fun to see how they can do in a setting where they get big minutes and have an opportunity to grow, not just in a training camp setting, but also in a game setting with other NBA guys on the floor. So from a Pacers perspective, going to be a fun year with a talented team and guys who can be the guy on any given night, right? Like Gabe York was a 20 points per game guy last year. Servetus, Pell, Anderson, NBA experience. David Stockton, NBA experience. A bunch of interesting Exhibit 10 guys, Kendall Brown and Queen, obviously, on the two-way is going to be interesting. So a ton of guys who can be good every night and a ton of guys with potential to have that Pacers call-up. Keep an eye on Justin Anderson, of course, who has that experience with Rick Carlisle. Servetus, who had the training camp experience, right? Kiefer Sykes, Terry Taylor, both in training camp last year, ended up getting called up midseason. The two-ways. And then two other ones, Abu Kijab, their first-round pick from the G League draft last week, and Tevin Brown are two guys that I think have potential enough to be guys who could get maybe a 10-day for the Pacers this season. They all have call-up potential. Those guys do, or at least the most on this team. So it's going to be a fun Mad Ants year. We'll cover them as as needed on the show. If it's, two-way updates, as those guys play often in the G League, and they'll play in Indy, I think 8 times this season with the Mad Ants. So, of course, we'll talk about that and covering the key guys that could get call-ups, right? We talked a lot about Justin Anderson on this show last year because he was absolutely killing it for Fort Wayne, and when the Pacers had an open roster spot late in the season, lo and behold, he did end up getting that call-up. So, there's not the COVID 10 days. It won't be as big of a thing this year, so it's not as imperative to keeping an eye on who could get called up, but still very noteworthy. And speaking of Justin Anderson, one-on-one interview with him also coming. I don't think it will be, let me rephrase that. I'm not going to air it on the podcast because he's not on the Pacers right now, but he is in the Pacers ecosystem. He did play for quite a few games for the team last year, so I did a one-on-one with him talking about the team, the Mad Ants, his goals, Rick Carlisle, Tyrese Halliburton, all sorts of stuff. You can read that on SI later this week. Let's talk about the Pacers' 4-factor stats as the season is now 2 weeks old. What have we learned about this team stylistically, and what do these 4 factors say the Pacers need to work on? All coming up to close today's Locked On Pacers podcast. You won't want to miss it. One more break here, guys, so I can talk to you about Acre Pro. When it comes to land sales, it pays to have experts in your corner, and Acre Pro Midwest Farm Group are your local farmland specialists. With decades of experience in Indiana agriculture, no one knows the market better. Whether you're doing a 1031 exchange, expanding your operation, or selling a row crop farm, your local Acre Pro agent will walk the land with you and ensure that a deal is done right. Great service is just the beginning. Acre Pro provides unparalleled land data, including soil ratings, elevation, flood zones, and land valuation across parcels so that you can get the full picture up front and be confident in the entire land market. Your agent will cater to each of your individual needs and help you navigate the complexities of buying and selling land, so the process is made simple. Experience the ease of Acre Pro by working with farmland specialists like Kyle Rule, Brady Hammond, Neil Herr, and Kyle Spray. Visit acrepro.com or call 765-587-3185 and talk to your local land expert today. Again, acrepro.com or call 765-587-3185. Thank you for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every day. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Sports Today. It's called Lost. All right, let's dive into something fun that I like to do to kind of evaluate what the Pacers are doing well and not doing well. Looking at 4 factors. The 4 factors, Dean Oliver, one of the pioneers of basketball analytics, kind of introduced basketball 4 factors as stats for a team. A nice write-up from Justin Jacobs, who's another analytics guru for the NBA, or in the NBA landscape, kind of summed it down. But 4 factors, to sum it up as easily as possible: score, protect, crash, and attack. Written by Justin Jacobs, it says the 4 factors are to score efficiently, protect the basketball on offense, grab as many rebounds as possible, and get to the foul line as often as possible, right? If you had to dumb down basketball as much as you could, that's how you talk about it. And the inverse is true for defense, right? Stop the other team from scoring efficiently, grab the ball when they miss, force them to turn the ball over, and do not let them get to the foul line, would be like the core principles of basketball. And those have been changed into stats that generally do a pretty good job of, if you're doing well in the 4 factors, your team is good. And so those 4 stats have been bared out to be effective field goal percentage, turnover percentage, offensive and on defensive rebound rate, and then free throw attempts per field goal attempt to see how much a team is getting to the foul line in terms of their possession count and shot count. So let's run through those for the Pacers to see where they're struggling. The answers won't actually surprise you, but there will be some surprises along the way. The first one is efficiency, effective field goal percentage, right? How well are you scoring the ball? How well are you using your scoring possessions? Pacers currently 19th in effective field goal percentage. That makes sense to me. They're shooting the ball well from deep, 11th in three-point percentage, making nearly their top 5 in three-pointers made per game, but they're awful on twos, right? 26th in two-point percentage and taking about league average 2-pointers per game. That's where they're suffering. In the effective field goal percentage department is that they're not making their shots inside the arc. They don't have a ton of great rim finishers. Matherin's been their best one this year, probably. So that is an area where they can get a lot of efficient looks from deep, but that's also more inconsistent. They're 19th there. But the defense part is where the Pacers have fallen apart here. They are dead last in the league in defensive effective field goal percentage. Opponents shooting almost 57% effective field goal percentage this season, 56.8% dead last. That's reflective of their poor defense and generally inconsistent play, right? Every NBA player is inconsistent to an extent, but younger teams especially so have that problem. And the Pacers being so poor at 2-point shots is killer for them on the offensive side, but also having inconsistent guys who are learning defense and learning to play together is going to be really tough for them to get stops. I think they're maybe the worst team on defense in the league. 30th is obviously bad. They've got to improve in that area. They've got to make it harder for other teams to score efficiently because they're giving up a ton of shots at the rim, right? They're doing well, well-ish with 3-point defense, but because they've gotten unlucky, right? They've given up 43% on threes from other teams. That's the second worst in the league, but they're not, giving up a ton of attempts. So if they could just get a little better at the contest and not be so far away, but that requires stopping the ball and not having so much defensive rotation. So they've just got to defend better and make it trickier for other teams to knock down these efficient shots. Taking care of the ball, 4 factors, number 2. Pacers okay in this round. They're 21st in turnover rate, right? They are coughing it up a little more often than they would like, certainly. But on defense, they've done a good job forcing turnovers, 13th best in the league in forced turnover rate. That's pretty good. Close to the middle is fine on both ends, but a little bit of work to do there. Quietly, Halliburton is first in the league in turnovers this year. I did not know that until literally today, but Tyrese Halliburton leading the, I can't remember if it's per game or totals, but he is the champ of the NBA. Yeah, he's 29 turnovers this season. That is first in the NBA, tied with Cade Cunningham, right? That is something he's quietly done quite a little poorly, is taking care of the ball. And that's going to happen when you finally are the number 1 dude and have all these possessions with the ball. But that is certainly hurting the Pacers' turnover rate. Getting a little better there, getting more possessions could help them. But they're doing well on the defensive side and forcing those turnovers. Miles Turner and Ben Mathurin have been a little turnover prone as well. Miles more so than he has in the past. He's had a pretty down, in his 3 games, he had 1 fantastic game and 2 really rough games. He's got to be better taking care of the ball. Mathurin, as expected for a rookie. And on defense, they've got some enforcers, but not enough. And they've got good game readers, but none of the game readers are enforcers. They have enough talent to force turnovers as they have been, but if they can get a little better there, get a few extra possessions, kind of play the Memphis way of dominating the number of possessions game, that could be a way for them to sneak some wins. Now, this is where they're doing well, is the rebounding area. The rebounding area has been the Pacers' best 4 factors spot by far. On the offensive side, they're 8th in offensive rebound percentage, and they're giving up the 9th fewest defensive rebound percentage in the league, right? They're currently 10th in offensive rebounds per game, and they're holding their opponents to 11th fewest defensive rebounds per game. They're just doing a good job on the offensive glass, and that is an easy way to get extra possessions, right? That's very reflective of when they miss, they get it, they get another chance to score. That's helping their offense look good. That's why they're scoring a lot every game, right? Or part of why they're scoring a lot every game. The rebounds have been impressive. The extra possessions are good. It makes up for some of that poor turnover rate. So credit to the Pacers there. It's not something that was obviously going to be a strength to me, right? I thought they would be kind of bad, actually, especially on the defensive glass. But Jalen Smith, that's been a big contribution for him on the offensive glass. Mathurin has been good for a guard at that. But Tadze and Jackson have both been okay at it. So credit to a lot of guys. Terry Taylor, when he played, did well on the offensive glass before he kind of fell out of the rotation a little bit. They have a good or a better than I expected offensive rebounding team, and that's been really helpful for them so far this season. Last thing on this, and this will kind of close up exactly going back to the main point, detailing the Pacers' 4 factors perfectly. Free throws, right? Are you preventing their team from getting the easiest points in basketball? Free throws. The Pacers are not. The Pacers' free throws per field goal attempt, 20.21 free throw attempts per field goal attempt. That's 13th in the league. That's pretty good, right? They're doing an okay job getting to the line, taking the 12th most per game. They don't have a ton of awesome foul drawers. That's pretty impressive to me. Miles has actually been pretty good in this area. Mathurin, of course, is fearless attacking the rim. Halliburton as well. All of those guys averaging 4.5 or more per game, right? They've done well getting to the line themselves. They have done an awful job keeping the other team off the line. Dead last in free throw attempts allowed per field goal attempt, 0.268. Other teams shooting 28 free throw attempts per game against the Pacers, hitting 82% of them. So they're fouling guys who are good at the free throw line. That has been killer for the Pacers, and that ties back into being the worst team in effective field goal percentage. The Pacers have done an awful job stopping teams from scoring easy points, and that's why their defense has been so atrocious this year. It's not that they're preventing teams from getting corner threes or layups, and so they're giving up a ton of mid-rangers, and that's this big hole in their defense. Some teams do defend that way, and it kind of works for them sometimes. The Pacers are giving up the easiest shots at the rim, at the free throw line from three. That is killer. They have to somehow find a way to stop something, and that's going to be a problem for them all year. They've got jumpy, inexperienced defenders that are going to foul. They're out of position every so often. I talked about their inconsistent play as a factor of being a young team earlier, but they have to get better in this way. They can't be the worst in allowing free throw attempts per field goal attempt and have the worst effective field goal percentage allowed in the league. Looking at just where opponents are shooting well from for the Pacers, right? Obviously, when they're giving up the 29th, the second highest three-point percentage, that's killer, but they're also giving up a lot of two-pointers, right? They give up the sixth most two-point attempts per game, and most of those coming near and around the basket. So if you had to sum up the Pacers' four factors issues, it's just all on the defensive end. They have to stop other teams from getting efficient looks. The low-hanging fruit for growth is cleaning up fouling if they can and just defending efficient shots better, but that's not low-hanging fruit. If a team could just easily do that, they would do it. I think the fouling is the low-hanging fruit. I think they can get better at not fouling, but I don't think it's a flip the switch kind of thing, and it's also not easy to just say defend better. But looking at the stats, it does bear out pretty well, and I think Four Factors does a good job of really simplifying from a statistical perspective what a team isn't doing well. In the get a lot of possessions game, right? Force turnovers, grab offensive rebounds. The Pacers are doing well there. That's allowing their offense to remain relatively afloat this season. So they're 7th in offensive rating this year, right? And their pace is really high. They have a lot of possessions, but they're horrible on defense because they're giving up efficient shots and they're fouling a lot, and that's why they're 27th in defensive rating so far this season. So that's the obvious area for growth for the Pacers this year. They've got to defend better 2 weeks into the season. I think that is clearly their biggest weakness, even though they've done a good enough job overcoming that weakness in a couple of their games. That's why they're 3-5. And don't play again until Friday. Thank you for listening to this far in the show. If you made it this far, a lot of fun topics for me to talk about today, and I like these statistical deep dives. I apologize for not having a lot of guests recently. I think I've only had 2 since the first week of the season. I've traveled a lot, right, to Chicago, to Champaign, to Milwaukee, to Fort Wayne for various things in the last 8 days, so it's been really hard to get guests fit into the mix, but I should have one each show for the rest of this week, talking Heat on Friday, and Dave Sorrell from formerly of the Miller Time Podcast will join us tomorrow for some early season Pacers impressions. So lots of fun stuff coming here the rest of this week on Locked On Pacers. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.